Hello and welcome to the Happy Little Futures podcast. As always, let's get started with a nice deep breath. We'll breathe into our stomachs and out through your mouth. And let's begin. So today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. I'm going to talk about why I don't listen to the news and why I don't read about the news. So before I get going, I want to just acknowledge that not everyone can switch off to the news. Not everyone is as fortunate as I am in that what's happening on the news is happening to them or loved ones or friends. And for those people, I truly do have every sympathy. And I just hope that they can find peace in some moments throughout their day, and that everything will hopefully turn out okay for them in the end. I wanted to touch on why I don't listen to the news, because I've had quite a few conversations with people recently whereby they've been saying that there's so much going on in the world and this, that and the other, and they can't listen to it and they feel guilty about the fact that they are switching off to it. So I want to sort of just give you a bit of background as to why I don't listen to it, and then explain why I don't feel it's something that you should be feeling guilty about. Because, like I said, it's a conversation that I'm having multiple times, and having gone through all of these emotions myself, I feel it's important to share, and I feel it's important to have that conversation to help others release that feeling of guilt. So when I was back in uni, so this is like 2010, there was a lot going on with North Korea and South Korea. My daily routine was I was at university, I'd get up, I'd make a cup of coffee, I'd sit at the computer and I would check BBC News, check my emails, sort of do a couple of other bits, and then get on with some uni work or whatever needed doing. Or I'd be off to do lectures. I did geology, so we had 9 till 5 lectures every day doing that. So I was pretty busy, but I would check the news every time I switched on the computer. I would check the news and I would check my emails. I found that I actually started to feel constantly anxious that something was going to happen, that things were going to kick off. I began to get into a state of sort of generalized anxiety and panic day to day, and it was affecting my sleep, it was affecting how I felt about working. I was distracted, I couldn't focus, and I realised that actually what was causing this was the fact that whenever I checked the news, the first thing I saw was stuff about North and South Korea. It was that the first thing that I saw was stuff about conflict. It was the majority of the news that followed that was negative news. And the media has a very big tendency to sort of talk about negative news and not so much about positive news. And I don't know why that is. I'm not even going to try to hazard a guess at why that is, but it became quite a big part of my life that this was starting to take hold. This constant negative talk about things going on, this constant negative energy was really starting to affect my mental health. I had a rough few years in the lead up to going to university. Grandparents had died. I'd been diagnosed with fibromyalgia after this. It was, in general, looking back, my mental health wasn't where it could have been. And I did have counselling whilst I was at university. I left that. I think I've spoken about this in the past. I left that because actually it made me feel a lot worse. I know for some people it works for me, it did not in that moment. And even if it had have done, had I have stuck with it, they did say to me at one point, it does tend to get worse before it gets better. I was not in a place where I needed to relive all of that. I needed to be focusing on my studies and on the present moment. So listening to the news, having that constantly in my ear all this time, really had a big impact on my mental health. I stopped myself from flicking to BBC News. I stopped myself from looking at any news channels. If I was on Facebook back then, there wasn't so much on Facebook. This was a long time ago. There wasn't so much on Facebook with the way that news is distributed now. But if there was something, I sort of trained myself to skip past it and not engage too heavily in it. Over the years, I've had to keep up this practice. I did get back into a habit of doing sort of the news check quickly at the start of my work day and things like that when I started working. But again, I had to let go of this. It became anxiety inducing. I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate on my work as well. And by just cracking on with work, checking my work emails and ignoring the news, it became easier to focus. So for me, the contact with the news in general can induce a big state of panic. I spoke last week about sort of the panic attack that I had. It could be that sort of just knowing that there's stuff going on around the world at the moment, even though I'm not engaging with that as a news story, it could be that just that isn't helping that underlying anxiety. So if I was to be engaging in the news at the moment, I know that I would be in a much more heightened state of anxiety, a much more sort of stressed place in general. And my mind would probably be wandering to it a lot more, and I wouldn't be able to be as present for my children. That sort of fight or flight trigger would probably get tripped a lot quicker with the kids. And so I would probably be a lot more snappy with the children. I would probably not be able to help them as readily with their emotions and their feelings. And I would probably be reflecting some of that on them as well, and struggling sort of to, like, maybe inducing additional anxiety in them because of the way that I would be. I say probably to all of this because, as I say, I'm not currently watching the news, and this is what I expect would happen. And I'm basing this off times in parenthood where I have sort of had worse anxiety, sort of that postnatal anxiety in particular after our youngest. These were the sorts of things that I was feeling and possibly could have been projecting onto them. So, as I said, the reason that I want to sort of highlight the fact that, one, if you aren't listening to the news and aren't engaging with it and are fortunate enough to be able to do so, you're not alone. Because I thought I was weird for a very long time. I thought I was selfish for a very long time. I thought that it was just me and there was something wrong with me because I had to switch off to this. So number one, you're not alone. Number two, you're not being selfish. If the news is triggering to you, triggering to your anxiety, triggering to stress in your day, raises that sort of that base level fight or flight response, or lowers it, I suppose, to a lower level because of your base level anxiety and stress being more because of it. It is not selfish to not listen to the news. It is not selfish to give yourself permission to have a lower level of stress or anxiety. If it was because your house was a mess, we would be saying, we don't mind that your house is a mess. Why project selfishness of feeling stressed and anxious? And why make it so that just because you're ignoring something that is bad for other people, it makes it selfish? It's not selfish. as hard as it is to say this out loud, it doesn't help anyone if bad events going on around the world are impacting you as someone that doesn't directly need to be impacted. It almost gives more power to what's going on around the world. It's not going to help the people that are currently going through that. If you want to do something to help, there will be funding things around, there will be things like that you can contribute to. However, sitting and getting yourself stressed and anxious isn't going to help those people that are suffering. So it's not selfish. Likewise, you shouldn't feel guilty about this. If, especially as a parent or someone that cares for someone, if you are feeling guilty about the fact that you are not engaging with these things, if you are feeling guilty about the fact that you can't engage with these things, because in some instances that is the case, you just can't, you've just got to let it go, you just can't engage with it, then it's a valid feeling to feel that. However, it is not how you have to feel. Just because you think you should feel it, it doesn't mean you need to feel guilty. It's going to be affecting those around you, those you are caring for. If you are in a more heightened state of emotion, if your base level anxiety and stress or distress are higher because you are projecting this guilt and selfishness and all of that, or because you are listening to the news and having it raised by that. So it's that same sort of thing of the guilt that you might be feeling will raise that emotional state that you're feeling in. I should clarify, I'm not a psychologist, but this is from experience, my own personal experience of when I feel more guilty. Again, it raises that base level stress because I've got that background feeling going on. So letting go of that guilt that you're feeling, letting go of those thoughts that you might be selfish, is okay. Is okay, because by doing that, you're allowing yourself to be more present in the moment that you are living. You're allowing yourself to be more present for those that you are caring for. You are allowing your response levels to be not quite as heightened and come from a more level place. So by doing all of these things, you shouldn't feel guilty. You don't need to feel guilty. By doing all of these, you don't need to feel selfish. And it's not a selfish act if it's not just protecting you, it's protecting those around you. So it feels like a very sensitive subject to touch on. It's going to be a very short and sweet podcast episode, because I just wanted to sort of possibly start that conversation. I wanted to normalize these feelings of not being able to engage with the news. I wanted to normalize that you might feel guilty and selfish, but also that you don't have to. I wanted to give those of you that are feeling these feelings of guilt and selfishness for not engaging with the news and not being able to switch on to it, I wanted to help you to let go of these feelings, help you to see that actually by letting go of these feelings, you are being more present for yourself, you're being more present for your children, for those adults or children that you might care for, and just for, like, even if you don't have children and you're listening to this just as something different, like those people that you work with, and if you're able to be more focused, if you're able to be more present in conversation with them, listen to what is going on around you, listen and be present in those things that you want to engage in, then it's not selfish. You shouldn't be feeling any guilt for wanting to engage more presently with your life. So I'm going to leave that with you. My weekly resets that I'm doing at the moment, I'm trying to work a lot on sort of letting thoughts pass and letting go of these thoughts. So by all means, join me for one of these. Practice in our meditation, letting go of feelings. It might not even be anything to do with all of this. It might be that you stubbed your toe and you're still angry with yourself for stubbing your toe. So we'll let go of those feelings of frustration, of stress, of anxiety, and learn to just be more present with our thoughts as they are in that moment, and be more present with ourselves in that moment. So I'm going to let you go. We are going to take a nice deep breath in and out. And I hope that you have a wonderful week ahead of you.